Hey random stranger, how you going? Welcome to episode 7 and 8 of Fate Zero. I know it's been a while. It's been a crazy, insane couple of weeks, and I've also been a bit sick. So we're good to go today though. So in terms of episodes 5 and 6 from last time, things are getting a bit juicier now in Fate because we're seeing progressively more interactions between the various masters and servants, and some of them quite unexpected ones as well. So it'll be fun talking about sort of where these relationships are going to go and what more they'll reveal about our characters and their motivations. For this recap, I wanted to focus on different pairings or groups of masters and servants and chat about their dynamics and any similarities or contrasts. It's been great reading your comments. I do try to read all of them. And the more I learn of Fate, the more I realized that for a show ostensibly about epic fights and war and magic and gore and all that, it also lends itself incredibly well to discussions about the psychological and the philosophical aspects of conflict too, which I find incredibly fascinating. First up, Waver and Ryder versus Kayneth and Lancer, two sets of masters and servants who came face to face for the first time in episode 5. In that shipping container scene, there were like 6 servants and 4 masters in the mix, which is crazy. But for those two particular pairs, they couldn't be any more different in terms of what binds them together as master and servant, beyond just what the Grail has forged between them. Ryder and Waver, fast becoming my favorite pair of master and servant after SaberIri. And I know that Saber and Irisfil are not officially a master and servant pair, but because they've been doing just such a great job of putting on a ruse that they are, I'll take it. I find it so intriguing that Irisfil dressed Saber up in Kiritsugu's fashion style, and just indulge me a bit to continue down this detour. The case for SaberIri having the best foe master-servant dynamic continues to strengthen, I think, because nothing deepens a bond more than your partner risking your life for the sake of enjoying some high-octane drifting. They both looked like they were having the time of their lives, even though Saber had that massive, fearful drop of sweat running down her face. I think if they both had just died from Irisfil driving them off the face of the cliff, that it would have been a no regrets kind of death. I don't know how it's going to end, but it may have even been a better kind of death than whatever they have coming at them as a result of continuing to fight in this Grail War. I'm certain at the very least that Irisfil is one of those written in to die characters, which is why she's being given these fleeting moments of happiness in these first 2 episodes. So I think we just have to enjoy these moments as we can. Back to Ryder and Waver, I suspect they are one of, if not the most popular pair in the fandom. How could they not be? They just give off these really super wholesome bro vibes that always puts a smile on my face. I also really love Ryder's maniacal, unhinged laughter whenever he's making these really grand, sweeping statements to everyone. Ryder may scoff at Waver and slap him whenever he does something that he considers small-minded, and Waver on his part might think that Ryder is an idiot for announcing himself the way that he did to all of his enemies, and just generally wanting more out of the Grail War than to just defeat the other participants. I think despite all that, they've somehow already established a bond that's built on a growing mutual respect and this camaraderie this early on in the game. And I love that scene, like to have the legendary King Alexander declare that he's proud to fight alongside him was a real moment of validation for Waver. Unlike Kayneth, who slinks around in the shadows and sends his servant off to do all the dirty work, Waver is, yeah, he was cowering badly in the chariot next to Ryder, but he was next to Ryder, which is what counts. Even if he was somewhat dragged along into the situation against his own will. But yeah, that's just by the by. In his own way too, though, Waver, I think, is trying to accomplish something great. Arguably, something comparable to Ryder's dream of world domination. I mean, he has ambitions to overturn this centuries-old archaic mage hierarchy and popularize the idea that your skills in magic can be technically honed to perfection and you don't have to have the right kind of bloodline in order to do that. I mean, like, the scandal of that idea in this old world. So despite their differences, it's their similarities in ambition and their rapid development of this kind of rowdy yet wholesome bond between them that makes Wave and Ryder so compelling as a pair. I mean, there's like the seeds of true long-lasting loyalty there. By contrast, though Lancer is also characterized by this unwavering loyalty to Kayneth, man, do I feel so bad for him, because, who was it? There was a comment. Yeah, so like Hoffertel said, one of Lance's key traits is his great loyalty and devotion to his lord, who this time happens to be Mr. High and Mighty Lord Elmalloy. Good luck. Yeah, so I just honestly don't think it's going to end well for Lancer. His loyalty is tied to his honor code as a knight who must defend the life and the honor of whichever lord he's just happened to be placed under. Like Hoffertel said, rather than anything inherently positive about Kayneth's character, in fact, Kayneth is shaping up to be the schmuck of the show. He's like sniveling and cowardly, he's a cheat, and on top of all that, he leans heavily into his mage bloodline and just kind of looks down on everyone else. The fact that he takes great pleasure in describing how he's gonna murder a kid, well, Waver, like mage style, with like max pain and suffering, paints the picture of someone whose ability to dehumanize has no bottom. And I think he deserved every bit of Ryder's scorn for those who fight from the shadows. I liked that you could tell Kayneth was cut by Ryder's comments, especially when Ryder called him out to be, called him out as unfit for the role of master. So it seems he also, despite his inflated ego, has this pretty thin skin and hates the idea of anyone, much less a legendary spirit, see him as anything other than superior. There's another cool observation from Edda233. You noted Alexander's disdain for assassins. This is something that was true to life. Alexander's father was killed by an assassin, and rather than become more cautious of them, Alexander became paradoxically more dismissive of them and eventually paid for it with his life. It's still commonly theorized to this day that Alexander died to poison. Yeah, it's interesting. The rumors too, I don't know how substantiated of how it was actually Alexander who arranged for King Philip, so his dad's assassination. So in any case, it's just another reason why I love Ryder. He calls out not just Kayneth, but also Assassin who's observing in the dark, and probably Berserker and Kariya, basically everyone who is not standing out in the open. So he really values fighting fairly and with honor, which places him in the same bucket as both Saber and Lancer. Although it's probably also partly because fighting out in the open is just more fun and exciting and is more a real test of your abilities. Last time I talked about how I'd love to see the three of them form a kind of honorable alliance of sorts, which turns out to be exactly what Ryder proposed, but of course he gets rebuffed by both the knights because part of the condition is that they bend the knee, and it would be unthinkable, obviously, for Saber to do that, as she herself is a king, and she was rightly so insulted at the proposal. Interestingly, for once, Saber and Kiritsugu agree on something, which is that Ryder is out of his mind. And Kiritsugu, interestingly, even calls Ryder an oaf. So obviously he has no time at all for these like grand statements and challenges to fight honorably, because obviously he's got his bombs and his sneaky assassin ways. For Lancer, well, he's tied to his asshole of a master, but even though Ryder fails to get Saber and Lancer to pledge their allegiance to him, at the very least, the three of them share an understanding that this isn't how they want the fight to go down. And that poses a problem for not just Kayneth, who obviously wanted Lancer to keep attacking Saber, but also for the church and Tokiyomi, who, when he finds out about the interruption of the fight between Saber and Lancer, says, "Oh, this is bad." And I took that to mean that they've hit on an unforeseen complication where certain legendary spirits, mainly the Honorable Alliance, instead of being just mere tools for killing in the hands of their masters, they actually have their own ideas of how and in what manner they want to conduct this war. So because of that, Kayneth is forced to use one of his command seals in order to force Lancer to gang up against Saber alongside Berserker, who we finally get to see in all of his stealthy, shadowy glory. There's something off about Berserker, shown in the way the shot is framed when Weber checks for his stats. Not only is he encased in shadow, but also it looks like the things in close proximity to him, it appear warped. And just like a quick question on that, Ryder seemed to expect Weber to be able to get a read on Berserker's strengths and weaknesses, but he can't because there's some enchantment blocking the stats. But so that suggests that masters should be able to Pokédex any servant just by looking at them? Or was it more because Weber is a mage and, well, a mage in training, and he should be able to do that? Yeah, I was a bit confused by that. Like, I remember a few episodes back when they were talking about rankings and servant classes that sometimes they slip into an almost turn-based RPG kind of language. So maybe the whole "I'll check his stats" thing was just another instance of that. In the end, Ryder ends up saving Saber from Berserker and demands that Kayneth retreat and stop from further sullying Lancer's honor by forcing him to fight Saber under these circumstances. Again, I love the honor binding these three, even though eventually they're going to have to kill each other. But for now, I'm liking this complexity where the calculations of war have to take into account the value systems of the servants themselves. Which brings us to another interesting comparison, that of Saber and Kiritsugu versus Kariya and Berserker. Tension-filled though the master-servant relationship is between Saber and Kiritsugu, there is at least a basic modicum of understanding there. For example, like Saber is going along with Kiritsugu's plan of deception. She, unlike Ryder, wasn't like announcing her name right off the bat to the other servants because she too understands in the strategic advantage of keeping things secret for as long as possible. Unless, of course, they announce their name first, in which case she's also bound by her honor code. And in that battle scene, Kiritsugu did have Saber's back. You know, they also share, I feel, character-wise, a penchant for stoicism, kind of eschewing passion for a greater purpose. And they are a formidable team, even if they may not yet see eye to eye on everything. Kariya, however, not so fortunate in his choice of servant. He did have to make up for his lack of natural mage talent, I suppose, by submitting to the crestworms and then summoning a berserker servant, which means he's just constantly in a personal war against his own servant, he needs to really keep a tight leash on Berserker. But even when he's giving his all, Berserker is still capable of breaking free from his control and acting out whatever the hell he wants to that's going on in his head. So, like, good question from Kiritsugu, who wondered out loud what the heck Berserker's master was doing by sending their servant into the midst of all that chaos. Either Kariya is starting to lose his own mind, which I would not be surprised over given his condition, or Kariya had carefully calculated that Rider, Saber, and Lancer weren't up for fighting anymore, which means Berserker would be free to start their own fight against Gilgamesh. Because remember, Kariya did tell Berserker to kill as soon as Gilgamesh materialized. So it seems at this stage, Kariya is only intent on smashing egg on Tokiyomi's face. As for why, I imagine because he's bitter about Sakura, that Tokiyomi would give away his own daughter, you know, whether that was well-intentioned or not, to his monster of a father, Mato. I've already forgotten his first name. But yeah, the scary old worm dude. And maybe it's also because Sakura's presence in the Mato household further reinforces how he's failed to carry on their mage line. So maybe it was rational or strategic on Kariya's part to pick off Tokiyomi's servant first. He just wasn't able to account for Tokiyomi forcing Archer to retreat, or Rider's intentions, like to make sure everything went down in an honorable way, or Berserker going off at Saber. So just all these things that he wasn't able to take into account, as is the case in the fog of war, right? So yeah, Kariya is not having a great day. We'll talk more about the twisted individual obsessions that both Berserker and Caster have with Saber. Like, the two happen to be the most devoid of rational thought. But first, you know, a character study on Archer, or Gilgamesh, and the group that he falls into, the trio of kings. So Gilgamesh is the king of heroes, Rider is the king of conquerors, and Saber is the king of knights. Unlike the other two kings, Saber and Rider, who are at least able to acknowledge the titles of others. And Rider even actually was over the moon at being able to meet the king of knights, finally. Gilgamesh, I suppose, being the most powerful in terms of the age of his legend, and also having that insane noble phantasm of his, which is essentially like an unlimited barrage of awesome weapons, and his general snootiness. All of that leads him to believe, to his core, that he is the only one worthy of the title of king. And I suspect Gilgamesh wasn't meant to appear during that fight scene. Like, he maybe was just drawn out by Rider's challenge to all the other heroes to show themselves and wasn't able to resist because of his pride. Like, I'm not sure, like, maybe Tokiyomi sent him there on purpose. Again, I just feel like there's a chance that it was Gilgamesh acting on his own, you know, hurt pride. I feel if Archer has any weakness, it would be that, his pride, and the ease at which he can be goaded into conflict and reveal all the cards up his sleeve. And a note from Red 7 explains, like, maybe lore-wise why Archer is like this. So heroic spirits can also be summoned at different points in their life. For example, Atelier can be summoned early into a myth where she'd only recently pulled Caliban from the stone. Gilgamesh, as shown in Fate Zero, is him before he went on that journey to find immortality. So last time we talked about how in the actual legend of Gilgamesh, he goes on this journey of self-discovery and becomes he just grows a lot as a character. So yeah, this is Gilgamesh, this is before he went on that journey, and thus before he learned all those life lessons that curbed his ego and cruelty. Although one odd thing about heroic spirits being summoned as younger versions of themselves is that they do have knowledge of what happens in their respective future, but they still act like they don't know. That last sentence is a doozy. I can't imagine the brain power it takes to track all of the fate lore and reason out any contradictions or sort of like weird patches of knowledge that arise when you have so many different timelines and sort of the same characters but at different points in their lives. Yeah, all that is fascinating, but back to the conversation. The point being is, yeah, last time I was very intrigued at the difference in my impression of Gilgamesh from the myth to the Gilgamesh in Fate Zero, and that definitely explained a lot. So thanks, mate. Interestingly, as Ryder was challenging Archer to state his name because a true king wouldn't hesitate to name himself to his enemies, the shot was focused on Saber, who, if you recall, when first encountering Lancer, did not announce herself, unlike Ryder did, even though she wanted to. Again, I think it's another nod to how she really is trying to work with Kiritsugu and his style of strategy. Or maybe Saber's also just being smart about it, because her name is a huge giveaway for Excalibur. The battle between Archer and Berserker was incredible. I loved how Gilgamesh initially took a position that, in accordance with his own view of himself, was physically higher, but Berserker's like, screw you, you're going down, and throws Archer's weapons right back at him and just slicing the lamppost that he's on, which triggers Gilgamesh and makes him lose perspective and want to unleash the gates of Babylon even more. So yeah, that was all awesome. The music too was just epic and pumping, and I loved learning this from Alma, who wrote that the music is certainly phenomenal. When Kajiura Yuki, so the composer, was brought on to do the soundtrack for this series, she actually requested to do film scoring for the series instead. So film scoring in this context is like making the music where you have the actual visual scene in front of you to work off of as a reference, as opposed to composing music without it. So I mean, music for most TV series and even for animated movies, as far as I know, is often composed based on scripts or even just descriptions of the scene. But in Fate Zero's case, what was her name? Kajiura Yuki. She was able to compose with the animation already done, which generally ups the quality of how the music complements the story. And my favorite part of that score was when Berserker forces Archer to the ground, and that's when this epic choral music or choral background starts, the kind of like vocals you'd hear in an ancient temple or something, which was apt because it leads into Archer's rant that he should be worshipped like a god because he's just so mad at how he's been brought down. Yeah, so details like that are really, really cool. Okay, let's talk about the crazies. Berserker, I'm more confident than ever given their combat skills and their appearance, and especially like the eye contact that they made with King Arthur, which triggered their going berserk. I think he is Sir Lancelot, but some crazed version of him that's hell-bent on destroying Arthur. Maybe like we're going with a version of the legend where he's driven mad, not just by his betrayal of Arthur, but also in his quest to save Guinevere from being executed because of the affair. He killed like a whole bunch of his other fellow knights that he used to serve with. So maybe seeing Saber reminds him of that shame, but because he's in Berserker mode, the only way he knows how to deal with it is to get rid of that reminder. The reveal of Castor as Gilles de Rais, probably the best and the most frustrating reveal of all, because the answer was staring at me in the face the whole entire time. So how do I know Gilles de Rais? When I was procrastinating for some law exams, I went on this Google binge for like the most insane documented court cases in history. And unsurprisingly, a lot of them took place in medieval Europe. And my favorite one was about like a farmer who was burned at the stake for tossing up and down a black chicken. Yeah. God, those times are crazy. So one thing led to another. And, all crazy medieval court cases lead to perhaps the first ever documented serial child murderer, Gilles de Rais. Like, not only is he famous for that, but also he's just intricately connected to Joan of Arc, who is a historical megastar in her own right. So I'm loving this development in a horrified kind of way. The fact that in Fate they've twisted Castor's mind such that he converts his historical connection to Joan of Arc into an obsession with King Arthur is utterly fascinating to me. I think it's more than the fact that Arthur physically resembles Joan of Arc, but also because Saber is like dressed like a man too. Another possible reason for why Gilles de Rais is drawn to King Arthur, they both technically were screwed over by the English or the Anglos. So King Arthur fought the invading Anglo-Saxons in the 5th century, and then the ancestors of they were the ancestors of the English, who later Gilles de Rais fought, and they were also the ones who burnt Joan of Arc at the stake. So who knows, maybe there's that sense of historical affinity that Cast feels. Malfeasance also gave up an interesting Fate lore related fact. So Gilles mistaking Arturia for Joan or Joan of Arc is actually a joking reference to the original Fate Stay Night visual novel. Back then, people had no idea who Saber was, and being a lady knight led people to speculate that she was Jeanne d'Arc. Type Moon has referenced this by making Jeanne what we call a saber face, which is any character that bears a resemblance to Arturia Pendragon. So that was interesting. So on top of all of the historical coincidence, you also have that kind of fandom reference, which is cool. From the way that Castor responded to Saber when she insisted that she doesn't know him, it's clear the more she denies it, the more Castor will dig in his heels. As to what explains the shift in Castor wanting to kill even more children after that encounter with Saber, well, speculation. Like, the real Gilles de Rais was rumored to have dabbled in Satanism, so it's not a big leap that Castor in the show would view God as the enemy, holding Joan of Arc's soul hostage, and he also probably holds a grudge against God, given how Joan of Arc died at the hands of her enemies, seemingly abandoned by him. So, in the mind of a crazed demonic killer, the way to retrieve or resurrect Joan of Arc is to so offend God by killing as many innocent kids as possible. It's like a Tower of Babel of dead kids, as he puts it. So he and Ryunosuke are now going to aim for quantity and not quality now. The Tower of Babel, of course, in the biblical context, was an attempt by humans to surpass or master God that ultimately failed. But for Castor, the Tower of Babel is a metaphor maybe for overcoming God by falling as far from grace as possible. And that's what passes as logic for him. Like, when I was thinking about this, it kind of twisted my mind into a pretzel, but I guess for him it makes total sense. It was interesting also in his rant to Ryunosuke, where he said, "No deed, no matter how evil, merits divine punishment." He's probably referring to his own historical end. So Gilles de Rais was hung for murdering hundreds of kids. And so at the core of his character is this belief of the unfairness of God's treatment of both himself and of Joan of Arc. And his wanting to rectify that basically by giving God the middle finger. As far as motivations to be in the Grail War, that may be amongst the most twisted, but also I find it the most fascinating. One other note from the interaction between Saber and Castor, because he reveals his name to her, she feels honor bound to reveal her name as well. And I love that about Saber, how honorable and upright she is, but also can't help but feel like this fidelity to that honor is going to be a weakness that other servants who aren't so bound by that same honor code could exploit. She already has that limp arm to contend with, so I'm kind of worried about that. Notably, her honor code also extends to protecting the honor of her fellow heroic spirits, because when Caster started rambling about how she should just cast aside her calling as Saber and how the Grail has already chosen a winner himself, she fires a warning shot at him to stop blaspheming and belittling the purpose of the other servants who have been called by the Grail. And in my head, I was like, come on, Saber, just a couple of centimeters to the left and you'd have one less servant to deal with, let alone the one who is the most annoying and talks too much. And not that she knows it, but is an absolute psychopath killer. But no, her honor code, and of course the need to develop the story further, prevents that. So what is Irisville concerned about during all of this? Another enemy unable to keep a proper conversation. That's what she's worried about with Caster. She's so freaking badass. It makes me think she knows she'll die because of this war. You know, when she talks about being created for the war, she knows she was created to die, and that must influence your outlook on what matters in life completely. It's things like getting to sightsee or drift down a mountainside in a really fast car, or have proper, fulfilling conversations that make sense. Those are the things that really matter when you know death is at your door. And the way Irisville is so carefree really reflects a mindset that's made its peace with death. And that is why I love Irisville so much. The next group I want to talk about is the cheating trio of Kayneth, a new character called Solo Ui, who turns out to be Lancer's second master and source of mana, and Lancer. So the cheat code Kayneth input, I guess, is an extra clause in the Master Servant Pact that allows Solo Ui to be Lancer's secondary master. And I imagine that should Kayneth die, the remaining command seals would transfer over to Solo Ui. The dynamics between those three are rather interesting and also so uncomfortable. You've got Kayneth dragging on Lancer for having forced him to waste a command seal, all because of his sense of honor. But Solo Ui backs up Lancer and drags Kayneth in return, presumably because she's a woman that's under the spell of Diarmuid's or Lancer's magic mole. And it's unclear what relationship Solo Ui has with Kayneth, but it's obvious that he's so whipped by her. Meanwhile, Lancer, due to his loyalty to Kayneth, is forced to speak out against Solo Ui for disrespecting his master. But then because Kayneth knows that Solo Ui is soft on Lancer because of that mole, he gets even more pissed off at Lancer. And then this just wondrous, awful cycle repeats itself. At least for now, because of the threat from Ryder, Lancer can continue his quest to defeat Saber honorably so far. But with those two masters, I think by the end of it, he's going to be forced to do things that makes him violate his own values. Okay, Kayneth versus Kiritsugu. When I rewatched that scene where Kayneth is gloating over his magical atelier and then the whole building just goes up in flames, I laughed so bad. I can only imagine the hard work and magical sweat it took to prepare that entire floor, like the many magical barriers and the 3 mana circuits. I don't know what those do, but I imagine they drain an enemy's mana. The portals leading to other dimensions and all the demonic spirits. Kayneth was so very proud of his crowning achievement, and then the whole thing just blows up. And I don't think we'll be ever seeing that atelier ever again. that is why Kiritsugu does things the way that he does. Forget the magic bullshit, the mage honor code, and just get things done quick and clean, or dirty, like from a mage's perspective. And that's also what Kire essentially puts into words when he confronted Maya, that disregarding all the fancy trappings and ideas of how a mage should fight is the key to why Kiritsugu keeps outwitting the other mages. And it's an approach that I agree with. When you're at war, particularly a war like the Grail War, where you don't have to deal with political fallout because, you know, the entire war is conducted under a veil of secrecy, then definitely fight it like Sun-tzu style. You know, use whatever tactics you have available to you, even if they're super brutal, and apply them efficiently so the war doesn't have to be any more protracted than it has to be. I don't think Kayneth is dead, probably because of Lance's quick thinking, but I do think his hubris and his preoccupation with his own mageness and majesty will be the cause of his downfall. There was a moment in the aftermath of the explosion when Kiritsugu is walking around and looks and spots a child crying in what I assume was their mother's arms. And I'd love to know exactly what was going through his mind in that moment. Was it, I'm genuinely sorry, but this had to be done? We know that he has an inherent protectiveness of young kids, including Saber. Like, as a kid, you know, remember he got angry that she was forced as a child to take on the mantle of king? Or was he thinking, you're lucky I am who I am now, because if it was the me a few years back, you'd be dead in the rubble of that building. So, I mean, this time, obviously, he had the courtesy, if you can call it that, to set off the alarm so that everyone could evacuate. Yeah, so with how complex of a character he's shaping out to be, may well be both. So this section is dedicated to the new and intriguing pairing of Gilgamesh and Kire. The first line that Gilgamesh says directly to Kire, I thought encapsulates their relationship in a nutshell. It was, you're better stockpiled than Tokiyomi, even if it is of a lesser quantity. So, first off, you know, they're both bored and don't like Tokiyomi all that much. Even though Kire may deny it outwardly, to them, Tokiyomi is incredibly boring, and I kind of empathize with them. When, like, Tokiyomi and the church find out about casters' night activities, either because of their honor code or more likely because Caster and Ryunosuke aren't exactly being discreet about their night entertainment. So Tokiyomi and the church decide to allow an alliance with the other masters because all of a sudden they care about rules. It's more that they want to protect the secrecy of mages and just eliminate the crazies before they continue on with this war. In that, I think we see Tokiyomi's weakness and why both Gilgamesh and Kire don't vibe with him. He refuses to acknowledge anything that doesn't fit in with or comply with his preconceived notions of his view of the world. So his question, why would the Grail choose such trash, you know, referring to Caster and Ryunosuke, reveals an extremely stubborn streak and unwillingness to challenge or change his own worldview, even when there is evidence to the contrary, that the Grail is not all it appears to be, or at least what he thinks it is. Tokiyomi and Kayneth too, like the two old fuddy-duddy mages, right? To an extent, they're both characterized by anachronism, this stubborn holding on to rules in Tokiyomi's case, but in both of their cases, like this clinging to the power that comes with being related to old mage blood and the old system and the old way of thinking. Also, like another little nugget from Red regarding Kirei and Gilgamesh. So these two give each other really intense looks and have protracted conversations about philosophy over wine. They couldn't be more blatant about how much better Gil's chemistry is with Kirei compared to with Tokiyomi. Tokiyomi is rich aristocratic type, traditional, conservative, plays by the rules. Yeah, pretty much. An open book who is ultimately boring Kirei. Oh no, so who's ultimately boring. Kirei, on the other hand, is a confused stoic man, goes behind his father and Tokiyomi's back to see and possibly kill Kiritsugu, clearly is messed up in some way. An interesting puzzle to be solved. Yeah, it was interesting that I didn't actually think about it till now when you pointed it out, that Kirei hoping to catch a glimpse of Kiritsugu or confront him in some way or even converse with him, that would have been completely outside of his father and Tokiyomi's plans. So yeah, the chemistry between Gil and Kirei was just off the charts. When Kirei asked Gilgamesh, almost offhandedly while he's cleaning up after him, you know, putting away all the empty bottles, whether Gilgamesh is already tired of his master servant pact with Tokiyomi, it signified something a lot more than the casualness of the delivery that the question implied. I think what's being set up is this potentiality for some shaking up of the master-servant pairs or loyalties that ultimately don't really mean much to these two. The way Gilgamesh so exaggeratedly responds, like, oh, how could I ignore such a vow of allegiance if it's Tokiyomi who is the reason why I'm even in this world, because he's supplying me with his mana. It was so sarcastic the way he said that, and really added to that sense of like flirting with the unthinkable, like of switching masters possibly. I don't even know how they do that. Well, I imagine they'd have to kill Tokiyomi first and then transfer over. I don't know. But then Kirei already has assassin. Who knows? There's probably some cheat code where you can have two servants. So yeah, it's just all of this flirting that's going on for the sake of sating their boredom. You know, Gilgamesh is not interested in any grand plans or ambitions for power or achieving enlightenment through reaching the swirl of the root, whatever that is. He's here to pursue purely hedonistic goals. Curiously, the way that Kirei admonishes Gilgamesh for dissing the mage's search for the root was also delivered in a very disinterested way, in a way that shows that he doesn't really care. Yeah, just a dead giveaway that he himself isn't really invested in, for example, what his father and Tokiyomi are both after. And Gilgamesh senses that shared disinterest. That's so weird. It's like they're bonding over this boredom of the whole war. And he has this smug look on his face as he watches Kirei try to defend the point of searching for the root. So I wonder if, like, does Gilgamesh know Kirei better than Kirei knows himself? Whenever Kirei is asked something, he always has, like, the right answer ready. Almost like he's an automaton, you know, when answering. And Gilgamesh is likely the only person who's ever challenged whether he even believes what's coming out of his own mouth. For example, when Kirei said he has no wish for the Grail, so he's not even sure why he was summoned, Gilgamesh immediately shuts him down and counters with, well, the Grail only chooses those worthy of its power, as in only those who would or could wish something of it. Only those people are summoned, and so obviously there must be something about you that the Grail knows, even if you yourself don't. Which leads to this fascinating conversation over whether Kirei has the capacity to desire things that will make him happy, and just even a general conversation about the very nature of happiness and desire. So on one hand, you have Kirei, who believes himself to be devoid of any happiness or even any desire for happiness, because according to the beliefs that he's been raised with, it would be sinful to want that for himself. And I think that's the moment Gilgamesh realizes that he's found his fun distraction for the Grail War. He finds Kire fascinating, not in the least because he wants to prove Kire wrong. Like, he disagrees with Kire's view of happiness by saying that bliss gained by wickedness would be a sin, would be wrong, but happiness can also be achieved through good works. He then goes on to talk about how bliss is one shape that the soul can take, and it's not a question of whether it exists or not, but whether you know its appearance. And to claim that there is no happiness within you is to admit that you have no idea what shape your soul has taken. Those lines were some of the most direct hints at Plato's theory of forms and how that relates to happiness that I've ever seen so far. It's quite amazing how often Plato pops up in anime. It's just so random, or at least it's just the ones that I've watched. Obviously here it's not like a one-to-one accurate espousing of Plato's theories, which in and of themselves contain quite a fair few contradictions. But some things in Gilgamesh's philosophizing really reminded me of some Platonic ideas. And one is this idea that happiness exists as an ideal or a form, whether you believe in it or know of it. And two, that the pursuit of knowledge, specifically the knowledge of these forms that exist outside of your knowledge, pursuit of knowledge of those things leads to happiness, and thus the fuller development or the shaping of the soul. And I don't think Gilgamesh himself would subscribe to the Platonic belief that being good in the virtuous sense equates to being happy, just because of how he's much more of an aesthetic hedonist. But I think he was throwing the good works can lead to happiness too bit in there to appeal to Kire's church ethics. In any case, Archer has a new project and has taken it upon himself to tutor Kire in the ways of the world. And yeah, sorry for going into that like whole philosophical detour, but I just find it so interesting how you can pick these very old philosophical ideas from just these conversations between two characters. From this conversation too, it surprisingly made me think that Archer and Ryder actually share a certain thing in common, and that is that they arguably both fall into the hedonist camp, like where we take hedonist to mean someone whose goal is to maximize their own personal pleasure. For Ryder, it's like a full range of pleasures that he's after. It's like food, sex, gratifying and like fun fights, and then world domination. For Archer, it's more like shiny trinkets, but also after that last episode, I think he really finds pleasure in just people watching and philosophizing about what makes him tick. You know, he's like this spirit who loves watching people like kids love watching ants go about their business. So I think you could pit the hedonists against the ascetics. The ascetics would be those who practice self-denial with the aim of achieving a greater purpose or a goal. Saber and Kiritsugu, I think, would definitely be in that camp, you know, and it's actually appropriate that they are master and servant. They're both, in their own ways, entrenched in this mindset that you can't have what you want or what makes you happy if you're gonna get done what you need to get done. In fact, those things that would bring you pleasure get in the way of achieving your purpose. So yeah, it was interesting picking up that division line between the different Grail War participants. The fact that Kire doesn't immediately scoff at Archer and just leave the room, I think shows that despite the stoic warrior for the church facade that he's got going on, Gilgamesh's suggestions intrigue him very much, that he at least thinks there's a sliver of possibility that he could find something new that can fill this hole in his soul, that he might actually have desires within him, he just doesn't know what they are yet. And it suits him great as well, this new side project, because he now has one more reason to go and find out what drives Kiritsugu, perhaps the only other person that he's been interested in. He seems to think also that finding more about Kiritsugu will aid him in his own self-discovery. I'm going to end with some really cool Fate universe facts that I dug out from the comments. Jose Valerio wrote that the occult cosmology in the Narciverse, which I learned is the word for like the whole world in which the Fate series is set, is really fascinating. For instance, Kirei's weapons are called black keys and are standard issue for members of the 8th sacrament, itself a cheeky reference to the 7 sacraments of Roman Catholic catechism, referred to elsewhere as the burial agency. Yeah, one, I was very curious about what those Wolverine type weapons were, and I love the reference to an additional like sort of secret sacrament. So, I mean, the official sacraments are baptism, confirmation, the Eucharist, reconciliation, anointing of the sick, matrimony, and holy orders. And then the 8th, if we're to go by Fate Zero, would be murder, I guess, of heretics, which, given the behavior of the Catholic Church in the past, really isn't that far off, to be honest. Also, thank you guys for clearing up whether servants need physical sustenance like food and drink, and whether they can actually take pleasure in eating and drinking. So apparently they don't need that stuff. Like mana is what really keeps them going. But in a tantalizing hint left by Ale Ma, I now know that there's actually a Fate cooking spin-off, which I would love to check out sometime, maybe after Fate Zero. So yeah, I guess the answer is yes. Servants can indeed partake in such lowly human pleasures as food and drink. Okay guys, episode 7 of Fate Zero, finally. It's been too long. I am aware of the subtitle issues that we had last time, so I'm just using another browser and seeing how we go. I'm using VRV, which I've never had an issue with in the past. So yeah, we'll work it out and we'll just see. Hopefully it should be fine. So if you guys are ready to watch this, let's do it in 3, 2, 1, play. Wait, is this Kayneth's atelier? It's just been condensed into this. Oh, don't do that. Why would you do that? Looks like it's been condensed into this ball. All that magical power. That was the building that Kiritsugu blew up with Kayneth in it, right? So everything's just kind of into this concentrated ball. I just love how Saber's so protective of Arisville, and Arisville's just... I'm sure Arisville has common sense, you know, she knows what's up. But yeah, she's just also enjoying whatever last days she has left. I'm curious whether the kids will play a role in this war. Like, we had Tokiyomi's daughter and then Sakura, so the 2 Tosakas. I can't wait to see more fights. Especially a fight where Saber kicks ass, you know, and isn't injured. I forgot Arisel's daughter's name. Ilya. Yeah, I wonder if she also, you know, will play a role in this. Hmm. Who is he announcing this to? So like some radio station? Oh. Oh, hey, they're all with him. Oh, wow, they all go to him as the overseer. I wonder how many people out there in the real world have like command seal tattoos. More than a few. It's got an evil smiling face. Oh, so he literally just speaks and then pigeon carriers. Hmm. Familiars. I love how there's no like secular criminal system. Like, I'm sure police are trying to look for the serial murderer, but Asha will be the one to finish him. So they want the extra command seals for themselves. Of course they do. So manipulative. I'm sure like pizza delivery people or whatever delivery that is, they've seen weirder stuff. Probably not this giant of man though. Just get a shirt several sizes too small. Or maybe that's the biggest size they had. Yeah. Oh my gosh, they're still living at the those grandparents' place. The fake grandparents. I don't know. I feel like Sabers has a lot easier time blending in. What is he wearing? Like brief shorts? You need pants to conquer the world. That is true. Yo, Waver suddenly finding a backbone. What a bargain. Oh my god, I love them both. That was surprising how Waver was able to negotiate with Ryder like that, almost like an equal. Use that. She does not seem pleased. Oh, okay. He wants to use her to draw him out while she wants to finish him off immediately. And then Kiritsugu literally just ignored her. Doesn't that tell them that he's still alive? Yeah. They should make an alliance with Lancer, right? Oh, attacking from the flank as well. That is like the worst for Saber. Also, she's severely injured. Smart. Oh, it's so sad. Saber is just like, she feels like she's in chains to cowardice. But I think Arasil gets him. She kind of gets both sides, really, Arasil. Oh, a rare doubting side to him. Even if he didn't die physically, he'd be dead on the inside, wouldn't he? And she knows that. Is he scared of... He is scared of Kirei, I guess, because he's an unknown factor. Damn, he's being openly fearful in front of Arisville. That's a lot of trust there. I feel like that was a hint that she knows what their relationship is like. I feel they all have this kind of weird understanding that they're all here for each other. A long range crystal ball. Can you zap people from... What? Wait, what? Oh, okay. Wait, who's that? Oh, those... Oh, no. Saber. I wonder if Saber's going to break from Kiritsugu's plan. She's like, she can't let these kids die. This is not going to end well. They're all like enchanted. It's gonna eat one like every hour. Oh, they didn't show it. Oh, God, that's horrifying. It's cool that Arisel can give her the orders even though she's not her literal master. This is not great. You do not run into what is obviously a trap. These intense drums. Those lines on his arm. Calling him a heretic. He's gonna let him walk towards her and then he's gonna send the demon after him. She's so soft. Wait, don't you have to? Oh God, I know. Oh God. Come on, come on. Oh, that's disgusting. Oh, those sound effects are awful. But what is he gonna do with her? Oh, the tentacles. Let's go. Okay, okay. Is that her armor? Yeah. Come on, one shot him. Are those all the kids that he brought along and they've just turned into these tentacle plant things? Did she just kill the kids? That's not his primary concern. He's like, are the other masters and servants coming in? Can I pick them off? What's happening to her? What? Wait, she can... Why can she detect, like, servants? Plato. Is this like the Satanism stuff that Gilles de Rais was rumored to dabble in? I love Saber's angry face. So delusional. So he's trying to convince her that God has abandoned her and God is awful. Oh, so he's trying to free her from from her faith, I guess, in God. That's interesting. Oh God. It's again like the choral music. Again, it's very church-like music. Just oh. Saved again by Lancer. Is he here on his own accord though? I'm assuming so. It's so ironic that like his lance will pierce her skull is a way for him to say, I'm gonna save you, Saber. He's doing it for his own sake. Kayneth needs that extra command seal. I like how like their goals are aligned because their master's selfish ambitions are at the moment aligned as well. So they can kind of do what they want within the bounds of those ambitions. His voice is iconic. Wow. What, does that thing just follow him around? How? I want to know what that thing is. Whoa. Some kind of organic shield slash. It's both defensive and offensive. Oh my god. You cannot defeat that thing with a gun. Oh, here's like where it seems magic has really gotten the upper hand over like tech and weapons. What is... What? Just trying finally pulling out some mage mage stops. Oh, this is insane. Love this battle between the mages. Manipulating his body's time, so he's not manipulating time itself. I wonder if Kiritsugu is way out of like practice with his mage stuff. He's already sweating bullets. Time altar. Oh, it's almost become invisible, almost. No. Oh. He's got a 1-2 punch. Is that special mage bullet? Wait, what? That was the gun that he... There was a special gun that he told Maya to pack for him, right? So it must have some kind of thing that can shoot through like magic barriers and stuff. Oh, the next episode is going to be a full-on episode, just that fight. I hope so. Ah, that was so cool. It was, I'm going to say nice, that's not the right word. It was gratifying to see that there was another side of Kiritsugu that he's not afraid to show, at least Iris feel, the side where he's just having an absolute breakdown, which we've not seen from Kiritsugu. He's always been so stoic and brooding and calculating, and yet here he is seriously, not seriously considering it because he knows that he's not going to do it, but just pouring out his deepest desire to just leave everything behind and run away with Arisul and Ilya. Because you could really hear like the desperation in his voice. Oh, that was such a good scene. Seeing that breakdown, and now he's just back to being his normal, murder machine mind. But to know that that's lying deep down underneath is really gives him a lot of depth. Okay, I can't wait for the next episode. Okay, episode 8. I don't know if anyone's going to actually die this early on, but we'll see. If you guys are ready to sync this, let's go in 3, 2, 1, play. Where's Maya? Oh. She doesn't want to go. That's another servant. Oh, is it because they're on the Einsman property and so there's kind of like this magical barrier that she's connected to? Madam. The one person that can strike fear in both Kiritsugu and Maya's hearts. Obviously, she's had contact with him and has felt not just his power as a mage, but also his coldness, I guess. Just the deadness inside of him. That's probably pretty freaky when you come face to face with it. It just whacks a book down. Man, Kariya. So we're just licking his wounds from the last time. I wonder if we ever actually get to see that scene with Saber and like the last battle at Camlin where she murders her own daughter, Mordred. Hopefully, like maybe when we start getting really deep into why they wanted to fight in the Grail War and what their wishes. It's kind of amazing how she's gonna order her to keep Kiritsugu safe. It's fascinating. I was gonna say it's fascinating that she can sense who it is that's intruded in on the magical barrier. I do like how they both are looking out for Kiritsugu. He has a lot more going for him than he realizes. No. I mean, yes, I understand. But also, I really like Arisville. I think she was hinting. Oh my gosh. What is he hoping that, yeah, eventually one of them will get through? Or is he weakening the magical barrier for that gun specifically? Yeah. Shot. Oh man, I was not expecting an actual hit. Ah, oh, nice. I know, it's just in the shoulder though, so. Volumen hydrogram. Some kind of like mercury ball. So it was like sort of heightened his ego and was like, haha, nothing can touch me, and then took out the big gun. I love the shot of that hallway. We'll talk about that line that Aristotle said to Maya at the end because that was really interesting. Said as someone who is, you know, a non-human technically. Ooh, I love all this strategizing. Kirei, come to join the party. You know what? I really fear for Maya's life. This is the second time that she would have encountered him, and I don't think he's gonna let her get away this time. No way! He's just pretending. Oh no. Never. That's happened quite a bit these episodes, hey, where you walk right into a trap where it should be obvious that something else is going on. Oh. Oh. Arisville followed her. I think she was meant to run off herself. She knows he wants to reach the Kiritsugu for answers. But maybe she doesn't have normal magic. Oh god, Arisville. What is that? She's a summoner? Of course, an eagle is her familiar or whatever. I love this music to go with the flying. Oh, she got him. Could she like just slice off his hands with those too? Like if she just tightened them a little bit more? He's gonna use the whole frickin' tree as a weapon? No. Oh, I thought he was gonna swing the tree around. He just sniffed at them. Oh, no. Oh, I was like, oh, okay. The other fight. Is it grimoire? Is it the more they slash, the more comes up in their place? I love that it's literally just holding a book, and that's where he's getting all his power from. That would probably be my, my secret weapon, just holding a book, hugging it to my chest. What? She has a plan. I love how they just let him talk. His greatest happiness is her pain. Is this like a wind tunnel that strikes through anything? Oh no, he just got the book. Okay, so just got the book, not actually caster. Oh, oh god. That was gross, but amazing. I'm gonna finish him off. So that was not her noble phantasm, right? I love how she said the word heretic. It's not living up to his expectations, eh? He's just dirty, covered in rubble. Weird ball mercury things following him along. We don't really need amazing strategies if you have such a big ego like that. God, he is the worst. Is Kare gonna come crash the party, like, right now? All these incantations that they do. But then he's got a third card up his sleeve. It's just left. He's like, I'm out. I mean, he's not going to stick around and get slayed. Oh, that was smart of Kiritsugu. That's why he wasn't. That's why he didn't like when Irisville was like, "Go Saber, go and stop Caster from murdering these kids." Kiritsugu was like he disagrees, but he didn't stop her. Oh, so good. Right. Oh, is this? Did he have like a master himself, like a trainer? Oh, so it works against the more powerful mages. Oh man, the origin shot. But what price did he have to pay for those? Oh my goodness. Oh god. Oh, I mean, yes, it's Kane. Oh god, it is Kayneth, but I. Lancer. Just. I knew it was gonna be that easy. He is gonna be mad at Saber for letting him go. Ah, the frustration. Oh man, no. Why? He's gonna ask why. Protect the Grail vessel. I hate this so much. Where's Saber? because of love. You're such a moron, Kire. He's not though. He has actually quite a few connections. Ilya, Arasil, Maya, whoever that woman was at the start. I mean, in his flashback. She's not gonna die here. She has some other greater purpose, right? Is it because homunculus, it's like you don't get killed that easily? Healing? Oh. Oh, does she? Wait. Oh. But inside her? As in, like, inside her body? As long as Saber's with her, she's fine. Oh. I love this. Man, Kiritsugu is such a lucky bastard. All three of these people on his side. Two of them because they love him. No. Oh. I can't believe how fast that episode went. I'm so many interesting conflicts and personal motivations to delve into. I loved the fact that Saber figured out it was Kiritsugu's plan all along to use her to not only deal with Caster, but also he probably knew that she was going to walk into a trap and so lure out Lancer to save her because he knew that, well, he kind of used their honor, their agreement between each other and their honor code against for his own purpose, which I thought was a master move, but obviously that would have pissed Saber off even more. And then interesting that Kiritsugu would assume that I got the two mixed around. That Kire would assume that Kiritsugu is exactly the same as him and so would have no one around him who can protect him out of their own free will and to the extent of loving him in that way. Like he has no concept whatsoever of personal connection or self-sacrifice. So yeah, that was really interesting. All right, favorite moments and observations that are sticking out in my mind right now, and we'll definitely dig into the details a lot more deeper next time. But yeah, as always, the church and Tokyomi once again just being their devious, scheming, manipulative selves by getting the other masters and servants to do the dirty work of fishing out and ratting out Caster, but planning to ensure that Tokyomi gets the extra command seals by having Archer finish him off. So that's that. I've got another question about command seals. I just kind of wonder if they're mostly used to force a servant who doesn't want to do something to do it, which is what we've seen so far. Or, like, say if the master and the servant's wills are aligned, does the use of a command seal give the servant like a power boost when they do carry out that action? That clash between Kiritsugu and Saber when they were strategizing on how to deal with Caster just walking in on the grounds with a bunch of scared kids, I found it understandable but also somewhat naive of Saber to think that the reason why Kiritsugu apparently didn't want to send her to fight Caster directly is that he doesn't have faith in her abilities. At the time of their conversation, it had strategic merit, because other servants are probably tracking Caster too for their chance to nab the extra command seals. And then it turned out that having Saber, I think, go after Caster was also a draw for Lancer, who needed to step in again and save her. I'm not actually sure if Kiritsugu calculated that putting Saber in danger like that would be another reason for Lancer to step in and thus be distracted long enough so that Kiritsugu could deal with Kayneth. Because Kayneth himself had also sent Lancer away to defeat Caster while he attacked the castle. I don't know. I'm going to have to watch that episode again to see exactly how things went down. All I know is that Kiritsugu had it all planned and he knew what Kayneth would do and Lancer and Saber, and they all basically danced to his tune and he got done what he wanted. I'm getting into this pattern with Saber where I love her to bits and I completely understand where she's coming from in terms of wanting to engage other servants, especially the child murderer Caster in direct combat. But also I'm a little bit like, please maybe stop and think for a little bit longer and maybe you can approach these situations with a more nuanced strategy, kind of more in step with Kiritsugu, because she gets herself into these situations where it's obvious that just walking right into a trap is going to put you at a rather disadvantageous position. And I think Kiritsugu knows that about her and has sort of worked that into his calculations, which is why things also end up going according to plan anyway. It's also becoming a pattern whereby another servant, namely it's either Lancer or Ryder, will just appear out of nowhere to save Saber. I wouldn't quite call it a Deus Ex Machina because there is some plot line there that sets up Lancer's dedication to ensuring Saber isn't defeated by anyone else except himself. Least of all, an obsessive caster. And with Ryder too, he wants a proper, even, honourable fight, and so he needs both Lancer and Saber to be able to finish their business with each other in the right, honourable way. But I think story-wise, they've maxed out the number of times that Saber can be saved like that. If they do it again in future episodes, under different dangerous circumstances where Saber's about to get offed by another servant, and she's still injured, by the way. They still haven't healed her hand yet, although I don't know if Avalon, but then no, because Irisol would have already healed her by now, wouldn't she? Yeah, so that's probably not it. Anyway, it would just be a little bit, they're doing it again if Saber needs another fortunate event to help her get out of something. And I think it would just be maybe pushing that plot device too much if they do it again. We'll see. The fight between Kiritsugu and Kayneth, some interesting concepts there with that ball of liquid silver, or it was mercury, and just how destructive that thing was. Also the role it played in swelling Kayneth's overconfidence in his invincibility. That, once again, Kiritsugu was able to make work in his favor by seemingly shooting this barrage of useless bullets at the thing, at Kayneth, causing him to lower his guard before pulling out his gun with those special bullets that have his ground up ribs in them. I loved the concept of those bullets that contain a part of Kiritsugu, and that being a thing to massively mess up a mage's like magic circuits. Like the more powerful the mage, I think it was, the better it works against them, because it cuts through and then sort of haphazardly ties back together their circuits, which cause them to short out. I think that's how it works. I gotta go back again and watch it. But that idea, it just embodies everything Kiritsugu is. You know, he is a big FU to mages. The meshing together of a kind of almost like soul magic with cold hard metal and the mechanics of a gun in order to damage like a certain specific section of humanity that he kind of hates and disagrees with. That was brilliant. The symbolism inherent in those, I think they were origin bullets, or they have his origin in them. Yeah, the symbolism there was very well calibrated. From a mage's perspective, it's, I guess you could call it brilliant magic, but also it's an incredibly twisted, deformed version of what they do. Also, I'm pretty keen to find out who it was that made those bullets for Kiritsugu. There was, there's so much to talk about, but the rooftop conversation that Kiritsugu had with Arisville, where she's kind of like hugging him from behind, and was really, it's a rare emotional insight into Kiritsugu's, I guess, turmoil that's kind of been plaguing him, but that he keeps under such a tight lid. Interestingly, Kiritsugu spoke of having already sacrificed Arisville for this war, like he was speaking in past tense, and I'm not sure if that was a translation issue, but I don't think it was. I think in his mind, and also Arisville's, they know that her fate is to not come out of this Grail War alive, and so he's kind of already treating her as if she's already gone, even though she's not. So yeah, that was kind of sad. And then amidst all this awful violence and mind games, and both Kayneth and Caster wanting to inflict the worst possible kind of deaths on Kiritsugu and Saber, like respectively, you have Ryder just playing around with online delivery services and arguing with Waver about whether he needs pants to conquer the world. And if anyone should run away and just leave behind the Grail War and go and enjoy the world and live their best lives, it's those two. I loved that look of shock on Ryder's face when Waver all of a sudden just stands up to him and orders him to at least defeat one servant before even thinking about having any more fun out in the world. And just like a disgruntled kid, Ryder is like, fine, I'll bring you ahead. That was a fantastic moment. And that brings us to the end of this reaction. The videos will not be as sparse as they have been in the last month or two. It's just that I've been dealing with some things. And so looking forward to getting back into a more regular schedule with these reactions, and definitely keen to, because Fate Zero, man, it's just, I could totally binge this so easily. If I had the time, and also if I didn't have to do these reactions. I think I've said that before, but I say that most of all for this series, I think, because it's just edge of the seat kind of epic grand fights. And so I hope you enjoyed watching along with me, and thank you so much again for the comments that you guys put down, and it just gives me so much more context of the show without spoiling anything, which I really, really appreciate. So I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of the week. Make sure you take care of yourselves out there. It's kind of a crazy world at the moment, and I will see you all for the next reaction.